Hey, what's up, man? What's up, everybody? What's good? You know what I mean? I had to make this video, man. Feeling good, man. Practicing, you know what I mean? Working to get my CDL, man. You know, get on the road eventually. You know, and, man, that's the thing, man. We gotta share some good news, man. Some good news, some progress, some things you're working on. One thing they always try to push on a guy like me, man. They try to say, oh man, all he's talking about is the negative, what's wrong, and the outlook on society and this and that, bro. Nah, man. We got to look at ourselves. Like I said on the last short video, man, we're checking out, man. We're checking out our opportunities, man. We're checking out how it feels to prioritize ourselves, man, above all. When I started the Casper pill, I used to tell guys, zero attachments, zero liabilities, then it evolved to where we are now, full-time ghosting, man. And you hear and what are these men talking about? Oh, all online and YouTube, and all you hear is my piece. You know what I mean? Can't put nothing above my piece, like I was saying, It's basically referencing what I've been saying, man. Zero attachments, zero liabilities, man. It's funny, man. Like I said, I've been saying this for a while. I watch YouTube, and I can tell I'm they've demonized me, man. They've demonized me because what I've been talking about for over 5 years, zero liabilities, full-time ghosting, the Casper pill, zero liabilities. What do you think they're talking about now? Oh man, protect your peace. What is that? Protect your peace is basically, man, zero liabilities. You can't have any liabilities, man. I've been telling people, man, it's a new term, Don't even say I told you so no more, man. Just say, yeah, hold the truth hostage, man. That's because at this point, that's what I gotta say, man. All my talking points are now the mainstream talking points. They flip the words a little. Some have taken try to take my terminology from, somebody tried to take my volunteers can't be victims to volunteers can't be something. You know what I mean? That's the funny thing about a lot of these men that claim they're making content to help other men and so on, yet they're robbing and stealing talking points from other men. You know what I'm saying? It's so easy to expose what's truly going on. You know what I mean? Is that a lot of men out there ain't trying to help you, man. I don't even need to mention the pills and all this and that, dude. It ain't hard to tell, man. You know what I'm saying? It ain't hard to tell at all, bro. You know what I mean? What's really going on, and how they're basically trying to prey on you, man. They see you as prey. Like I said, man, they see you as there was a guy revving up his engine to go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, man, a lot of people trying to take advantage, prey on other men, man. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the biggest things happening. They're preying on other men, Because the truth is, man, they'd rather take away from another man than give him his respect and give him his props, man. That's what's going on. But not to get on the negative or whatever, or just exposing what the hell's going on, is that, man, you gotta celebrate what you're working on, man. What you're working on, and the thing is, it could be something that's just to benefit you, man. Just to benefit you that you're working on, man. You know what I'm saying? That's all that matters, because it's all about protect your peace, man. The truth is, protect your peace is nothing more than zero liabilities, man. That's why I've been telling guys, man, for years. You're in my era now, man. You're in the era. You're in the hold the truth hostage era, man. You're in the full-time ghosting era. And it ain't hard to tell, man. It ain't hard to tell what's gonna happen next, man. What's going on? Because what they don't understand is, men are in the process of a mass evacuation. You know what I'm saying? Men are in the process of a mass evacuation from society's what they've deemed our responsibilities. What we have to be liable for, man. Which a lot of the liability comes with. We must compromise our freedom and compromise our identity, compromise our manhood and so on. That's one of the major things they've been pushing. But what's happening now is that, man, as more men basically are stepping away, and like I said, it's a lot of it is offshoots of what I've been saying. If you look at full-time ghosting, zero liabilities, zero attachment, zero idealism. The only thing you're allowed to attach to is yourself and your freedom. That's priority, man. They've feminized men for so long. The government and the corporations, the government and the industry field, you know what I'm saying? System guidance, they've basically emasculated men for so long that they believe that emasculation is our natural way of living. You know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of corporations and companies are freaking out. That's why a lot of corporations and companies are freaking out. They're like, man, how come these men are not emasculated? How come they're not sacrificing themselves at the altar? You know what I'm saying? How come they're not rewarding the destruction of a family by becoming the next man to volunteer? You know what I'm saying? The system has been, is so used to the success of their male emasculation that they thought it was just natural. They thought it was the default setting of men. So they never thought anything could change that. You know what I'm saying? And like I've been saying you could go on my channel, man. YouTube's hitting over 300 videos, but even then, I still covered everything. You know what I'm saying? I still got videos on everything that's coming and that's happening, And what's happened is society is so used to men being emasculated that they thought with technology, the internet, ability to carry a studio in your pocket with your phone and the access to social media, creating your own network of, network, they thought men would just continue to line up and volunteer. It's just, that's their natural way, They kept pushing the narrative for, it's been over 100 years of emasculated men, over 100 years of emasculation. You know what I'm saying? And what's happened, and they never thought it would happen, is that they thought men would never expose that they're not comfortable with compromising themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're not comfortable with compromising their manhood. You know what I'm saying? For example, they kept pushing allowance, And the thing is, I could go on to entertainment aspect, but, I'll save that. But they kept pushing a narrative that, you got the happy wife, happy life thing, which is basically a man is designated to be a servant for his wife, in that her happiness comes before his. You know what I'm saying? When the truth is, it's in full reverse. It's really a healthy, happy man is a happy life for a woman. That's how the wife gets happy. That's how the wife gets safe. And even the meaning of happiness has been altered anyway to just be the chase for consumerism. You know what I'm saying? The chase for validation. They didn't see this coming, that men, with the internet and everything happening, with everything going on, and how much they've targeted men with, we had Me Too in the 2010s, you know what I'm saying? We had a massive level of platforms and websites just basically allowing the narrative to spiral out where, women can upload videos saying all men are trash. That means sons, nephews, uncles, grandfathers, brothers, uncles, and grandpa, whatever. Godfather, they're all trash. And the men, what they didn't see coming is that they didn't see that you got COVID-19 with the quarantine that happened. The men were just constantly targeted left and right to the point where the men weren't allowed to avoid it. You know what I'm saying? The men weren't allowed to avoid it. And what happened, and it was the perfect storm with COVID-19, the quarantine, is that men had to face society on a mental level. You know what I'm saying? On a mental level. And men couldn't run away from nothing, because everything was attacking the men. Hollywood, gaming, you're not even allowed to have escapism anymore. And they're constantly pushing you to compromise your manhood. So men finally faced it, and the men en masse are all seeing what's going on, and they're stepping away at their own pace. Some men domestically will just avoid everybody. Other men are traveling overseas. Traveling overseas has now become, for men, their best way to enjoy themselves. Traveling for men used to be vacations, family outings, and so on. No, men are traveling overseas for, be it relationships, sexual escapades, activities, whatever. Men are avoiding what they have access to domestically, And the men are basically diverting and checking out of society in their own way. And, they've demonized that word. Like I said, they basically demonize all the most basic words. It's funny that checking out of a store, checking out on a website, buying something, nothing negative with that. Nothing negative with that checkout. But you checking out of a system that wants you to compromise your life and your reality. Now the word checkout is bad. Just like they took the word pride, they took the word alphabet. You know what I mean? So the men have, in sharing their thoughts on everything, because you couldn't avoid it. You couldn't avoid it, man. You couldn't go online without the mentioning that all men are trash, all men are garbage, men are threats. You know, they even compared that a wild animal, a bear is safer than the men. You know what I'm saying? It was just a constant escalation of how can you disrespect a man? You know what I mean? How can you devalue a man's life and existence? You know what I'm saying? That's what it became. So a lot of men in accepting that, you know what I'm saying, facing it, the men have finally stepped away, man, checked out. And what's happening is the men are checking out of everything, you know? Some men will never watch a movie again. Some men will never play a video game again. Some men will never date a domesticated woman. Some men will never go outside to festivities with other people again, you know? Men are checking out in mass in varying ways, you know? And another thing is, as I predicted with full-time ghosting, men are operating on zero liabilities. You know what I'm saying? Men aren't, what is it now? You got, what is it? And I've been saying this years ago, but now you have something called financial celibacy, where men are refusing to spend their money on women and so on. You know what I mean? But it's not just spending the money. A lot of men are realizing, wait a minute, beyond the fact that she could be sleeping with other men and have a lot of men are realizing that, wait a minute, you're an adult, you could go to a restaurant yourself, you know? I'm an adult, I could go to a restaurant myself, you know? The true meaning of where we're going is us, you know what I'm saying? It's us two talking and meeting each other and building a relationship. You know what I'm saying? That can't be replicated on your own. You know what I'm saying? That can't be replicated on your own. You need a man to participate in that. But another thing is, men are also, as I've said, like I said, man, there's no point in saying I told you so anymore. It's just now hold the truth hostage. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm gonna be saying from now on. You know, hold the truth hostage. You know? You know what I mean? Because I told guys, and you can look it up, the dating simulation, you know? The dating simulation, that men are simulating dating mentally, and all the men are arriving at the same point where there's no point. You know, all the men are arriving at the same moment where they're saying there's no point. There's no point in doing it. You know what I'm saying? You're just gonna be spending money. Like I said, with dating simulation, you're paying someone to have a chance to continue paying for them. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it is. A lot of guys will say a job interview where you're paying. No, man, you're paying someone for a chance to keep paying to be around them. That's it. It's really you're paying. You're trying to get a subscription. You know what I'm saying? A female subscription, you know? And right now you got the narrative of male loneliness epidemic. You know, it's funny how there's a male loneliness epidemic now, but not during COVID-19. There wasn't a male loneliness epidemic during the quarantines, COVID-19, during the epidemic. There was no male loneliness epidemic, you know? That's how you know it's such a scam. You know, what's happened, as I've said and predicted, my bad, I said predicted, I mean hold the truth hostage. You know, as I've said, hold the truth hostage, is that, as I said, hold the truth hostage, you know. The thing is this, man, the women, as the men check out of all aspects, I said full-time ghosting, men are prioritizing the only thing that exists, themselves. You know what I'm saying? But since men started simulating dating, they're simulating life. Men are simulating the interaction and realizing, and it's hurting a lot of the women because the women have been stripped of maternal, maternity, maternal instincts, shame, legally. In all aspects, they've been stripped of that. And, a lot of the feminists, which is, we all know feminism is nothing more than government and corporate propaganda or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of those feminists thought the more useless they are to men, the more free they are, Most women now can't cook, can't clean, you know what I'm saying? They don't have any accountability for their actions. So what has that made them? It's made them useless to men, but it's also made them extremely useful for consumerism, because if she can't cook, she's got to go buy food, right? She can't clean, she got to pay someone to clean, They stripped women's ability to exist without participation in consumerism. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened. So a lot of the women now, what's happening and why they can't find relationships is that a lot of women are basically saying, they had a good date. Women have become, they're just good at being around you and spending your money. You know what I'm saying? That's what they've been stripped down to. That's what they've been stripped down to, where they're just good at spending your money. And what's happened is a lot of women are saying, they had a good date with a guy. They had a good moment with him. And the guy's gone. He ghosted her. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, wait a minute, we've been out on 2 dates or 3 dates. Some guys, it takes, there's still levels of emasculation in the men. So some men, it might take 2 dates, 3 dates to realize, wait a minute, I'm just spending money on this person. I'm just spending money on this person, and I know this person's probably sleeping with someone else. You know what I'm saying? And there's no way for me to confirm otherwise, so what the hell am I doing? You know what I'm saying? What the hell am I doing? So that's what's happening. And what's happened is with the fact that we had Me Too and the women weaponizing the internet to basically embarrass and false accuse men, what's happened is men are completely checking out, en masse. Men are becoming, like I've been saying, it's becoming a ghost town. You know what I mean? Where the women can't even find the men, and the women are projecting their loneliness as a male loneliness epidemic, when the truth is the women are the most alone. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones that are the most alone. And, it ain't the men, so they're projecting their loneliness, and they're hoping that this will acquire sympathy from the men, will make the men sympathetic and make the men reach out to date them and start a relationship. I told you, my bad, hold the truth hostage, my bad. That was a good little joke, but but like I said, I told you guys, hold the truth hostage. You know what I'm saying? I told you guys that the women, their looks, their youth, it won't mean anything. It don't mean anything anymore, man. You know what I'm saying? You know how men used to say, oh man, they hit the wall and this and that. None of that matters, because at the end of the day now, their youth, the men already know. The youth has become weaponized against them. The way the men are looking at it is two ways. If she's in her youth, she's sleeping around. You know what I'm saying? She's sleeping around and you can't have any authority on her. Then if she's old, she's slept around and just can't sleep around at the frequency she used to. And she's trying to get you to now buy into her because she can't sleep around as much. You know what I mean? She can't sleep around as much. So the women are trapped in a loop now. The loop is young or old, the men are done. You know what I'm saying? Young or old, the men are done. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, the men understand that with her youth basically comes the fact, like I was saying, she could sleep around with more men. Then with her getting too old, she slept around with a lot of men and just can't replicate sleeping around as much as she used to. So there's a lot more time for her to spend with one man because she's not as wanted. You know what I'm saying? So the women are now stuck in an infinite loop domestically in the West. You know what I'm saying? They're stuck in an infinite loop. And as I said, with full-time ghosting, now there's a lot of videos coming out where all men aren't sleeping with the women. Men are practicing financial and physical celibacy. Men are just avoiding women and going to work and doing what they gotta do. You know what I'm saying? And then men will basically substitute, like I've been saying, they'll substitute their domestic need. They'll substitute their domestic need of women overseas or somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? The men are substituting their domestic desire for women for overseas. So what's happening is that with this understood, there used to be a saying the comedians used to say, a woman would say, "Oh, you're not getting sex," and a man would say, "No, I'm not having sex with you." That's what's happening now. The men are basically substituting domestic sexual interaction for overseas. You know what I'm saying? Or traveling. Or the men aren't, or just the men are substituting women for their adventure, their need for other activities, stock market. And what's happening is, there's a narrative that's being pushed, male loneliness epidemic. It's funny how the male loneliness epidemic comes out right when the biggest talking point is the fact that over 45% of women will be single and alone. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how once that talking point dropped, and that was by the banks, you know what I'm saying? That was by the banks that said that over 45% of women will be alone and single and all that, And out of nowhere, a couple years later, there's a male loneliness epidemic. When the truth is that, and I said this years ago, hold the truth hostage, said this years ago, that men will basically start, I said this years ago, that men won't be dating anyway. You know what I'm saying? Men will start looking at a woman for just being here domestically, being born here domestically, arriving here domestically. Because even the women from overseas are having problems. You know what I'm saying? They're having problems getting relationships because the men are basically checking out of dating domestically. The men are basically saying that domestic relationships are fictional. And a man to invest in fiction as reality, something's wrong with him. So what's happening now is the women are in a situation where the men aren't dating, the men aren't having anything that comes with that. And marriage rates are down, women having children are down. Because if the men aren't even dating, if the men aren't even trying to talk to the women, communicate. How can a relationship ever find fruition that would lead to having children, marriage, or anything of that sort? So what's happening is, as predicted, hold the truth hostage, as predicted, what's happening again is that, man, the men are seeing that this is a competition. The men are seeing, when the men heard 45%, when the men heard that, women will be alone by 45%, the men saw that as a challenge and said, that's not low enough. You know what I'm saying? That's not low enough. The men said that's not low enough, and they're on a quest to, kind of like one of the homies told me about stock markets where people will short a company, or, the men are trying to collapse this dating market completely. For the men, 45% ain't enough. You know what I'm saying? It's too low. They said by 2030, 45% of women will be alone. For the men, that's not enough. The men are seeking to crash that into over 60 to over 80%. That's what the men are looking at, and way before 2030, because things are only escalating. You know what I'm saying? Things are not de-escalating. There is no more common ground between the sexes. There's no common ground. For the men, they've seen everything that comes from the opposite sex being weaponized. They've seen mothers openly transition their sons, transition their daughters. The men have seen, so the men have basically seen this as a competition, that they gotta put it a lot further below, that the men are seeing that by 2028, that's what I'm saying, it's only escalating, since there is no more common ground between the sexes, And I said this years ago. And the videos are on here. I got a fatherhood funeral. You know what I'm saying? Fatherhood funeral. I got all these videos on here that show you. Men will now see that the way they can protect children, the best way to protect a child is to never have one. You know what I'm saying? That's what's in the back of men's minds, And for the first time in history, in history, men see women as one of the most dangerous things for them in society, So what's happening is that the men see nothing but threats, domestically. So the men are now viewing that, and like I said, to protect the child, a child will never know losing their father. A child will never know the insulting of their father, the disrespect, if they were never born, So the men are realizing, the safest thing they can do for a child is to never bring them in this world. And they try to reverse that talking point by pushing the narrative that, the women don't want to have kids. No, it's the men. The men don't want to have kids. You know what I'm saying? The men see not having kids as protecting them, So what's happening now is, we're in a full-time ghosting era, Like I said, man, men will accept that they can't set any terms in a relationship. Anything a man sets in a relationship is abuse. It's abuse, man. It's domestic abuse, man. How dare you as a man have terms for a relationship? You saw what happened with John Cena. You know what I'm saying? Had simple rules. That was abuse, man. Men are finally realizing that their existence, by virtue of being a man, they are abuse. Especially when with a woman. By virtue of being a man, they are abuse. You know what I'm saying? In the eyes of the law and everything. And you could even see with the Justin Baldini case a case that will rectify and alter entertainment forever. Because men are checking out. Men are checking out of collaborating with the opposite sex. And now with AI, men will basically replace female actresses, female roles with an AI. You know what I'm saying? With an AI and artificial intelligence that will not, like Blake Lively, will not sue them and falsely accuse them on a movie set or during any interactions. You know, they keep pushing the narrative, all men are gonna date AI women, men are gonna be in relationships with them, because they're pushing that narrative to basically shame the men. When the truth is that the men will be basically substituting women in roles and things they're doing with artificial intelligence, you know, their businesses and all that stuff, you know, creative ventures, you know. And the thing is, we have examples of that working. All you gotta do is look up Lara Croft. Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, was a 3D character, you know, before she was ever a real person, you know, and an actor in a movie. So men already know that other men are more than willing to support something, you know, other men are more than willing to support something that is artificial, that is a woman. So it's coming, man, you know. You know, we're in the hold the truth hostage era, man, you know. It's the full-time ghosting era, you know. And you know, this has been hold the truth hostage, where if the truth was so important, we wouldn't negotiate with lies, would hold the truth hostage.